What if I told you that procrastination is not just a habit, but a thief that quietly robs you while you sleep? It doesn't come with noise or warning. It simply whispers, do it tomorrow. And tomorrow feels safe, so harmless, so forgiving. Harry believed that whisper all his life. He thought putting things off meant buying more time. But what he didn't realize was that each tomorrow he delayed was another day gone forever, never to return. When he was younger, he had brilliant ideas, a small business he wanted to start, a book he wanted to write, even trips he wanted to take with his children while they were still young. But instead of acting, he pushed them forward on the calendar, always promising himself a perfect day to begin. That perfect day never came. His children grew older, the opportunities grew smaller, and his confidence grew weaker. Procrastination had eaten the brightest parts of his dreams, bite by bite, until all he had left was the dull taste of regret. The truth is, procrastination tricks you. It convinces you that waiting costs nothing, but the cost is everything. You lose momentum, you lose faith in yourself, and worst of all, you lose time. Time doesn't stop to let you catch up. It doesn't return because you suddenly feel ready. As the author of The War of Art once wrote, resistance is strongest at the start, and the longer you wait, the heavier it feels to begin. Imagine if you had started learning a skill 5 years ago, where would you be today? Imagine if you had written just one page of your dream every night, what book would you hold in your hands now? Procrastination blinds us to those possibilities, and by the time we realize the price, the window has already begun to close. That's why Harry's story warns us. Procrastination is not harmless delay, it is slow self-destruction. It doesn't kill your dreams in one blow, it starves them until they wither. And unless you learn to act before you feel ready, someday will always remain just a word, never a day on your calendar. Neglecting health is one of the most dangerous habits a person can carry into the later chapters of life. Harry thought of his body as something unbreakable, a machine that could take endless pressure without slowing down. He worked late nights, survived on fast food, and told himself he was too busy for exercise. When friends invited him for a morning walk or suggested a checkup, he laughed it off. "I feel fine," he said, as if feeling fine today guaranteed feeling fine tomorrow. But the body is like a bank account. Every night of missed sleep, every meal without nourishment, every day without movement, it all adds up. You may not notice the withdrawals immediately, but sooner or later, the debt comes due. For Harry, the payments arrived in his 40s. Fatigue that never left, weight that refused to move, aches that grew sharper with each year. What he thought was strength in his younger years was actually carelessness disguised as energy. The tragedy of neglecting health is that it doesn't just steal years from the end of your life. It steals quality from the years in the middle. It takes away the joy of running with your children, the peace of waking up refreshed, the confidence of moving without pain. By the time Harry realized the value of his health, his body was no longer the obedient servant it once was. It had become a constant reminder of the choices he ignored. As the saying goes, those who don't make time for wellness will eventually have to make time for illness. And isn't it strange? We often protect our phones with cases, our cars with regular maintenance, and our houses with repairs. But the one home we can never replace, our body, we treat as if it can endure anything. Harry discovered too late that strength is not just lifting weights, but respecting the vessel that carries you through life. The lesson is clear. Health cannot be postponed like a meeting. It is either invested in daily or it quietly erodes until one day you wake up and realize the cost is no longer optional. Blaming others was Harry's quiet companion for most of his life. Whenever something went wrong, his first instinct was to look outward. If he failed at work, it was because his boss was unfair. If his finances were tight, it was because the economy was cruel. If he missed opportunities, it was because someone else had more luck. Blame became his shield, protecting his pride, but chaining his progress. The problem with blame is that it feels comforting in the moment. It gives you a story that explains why life is hard and why things didn't turn out the way you hoped. But hidden inside that comfort is poison, because every time you place responsibility in someone else's hands, you also hand away your power to change. Harry didn't see that. He thought blaming others kept him safe from judgment, but in reality, it made him powerless to improve. There's a quote from Man's Search for Meaning that says, "Everything can be taken from a man except his ability to choose his response." Harry never exercised that ability. He believed life was happening to him, not through him. So he waited for others to change, for the world to adjust, for luck to knock at his door. Years passed, and nothing changed because he never did. One day, while reflecting on his failures, Harry realized something painful. The common thread in all his problems wasn't his boss, his friends, or the economy. It was him. The moment he understood that, something shifted. He saw that responsibility is not blame, it's freedom. To say it's my fault is not to carry shame, but to hold the key. Because if you caused it, you can change it. If you had a hand in it, you have a hand in the solution. The truth is simple. Blaming others might protect your ego, but it will cost you your future. Owning your life, even the hard parts, may hurt at first, but it gives you the only power that matters, the power to change your story. Negative self-talk was perhaps the most invisible habit Harry carried, yet it was the loudest voice in his life. He could silence critics, ignore doubters, and even smile through other people's negativity, but when his own mind whispered, he listened. "You're not good enough. You're too late. You'll never succeed." Those words weren't spoken by enemies. They were spoken by him, to himself, every single day. At first, Harry thought these inner voices were harmless. After all, they were just thoughts. But thoughts, repeated often, become beliefs, and beliefs shape destiny. When he had an idea, self-talk shut it down before it could live. Why try? You'll only fail. When he had a dream, it smothered it with doubt. Other people are smarter, younger, more talented. Harry became his own jailer, building a prison from words no one else could hear. The danger of negative self-talk is that it hides beneath reason. It doesn't scream. It whispers just enough to make you hesitate, and hesitation, repeated enough, becomes paralysis. Harry realized that for years, he wasn't failing because others stopped him. He was failing because he stopped himself before he even began. There's a saying that if you wouldn't speak to your friend the way you speak to yourself, then you don't have a critic inside. You have a bully. Harry lived with that bully for decades, and the more he believed those harsh words, the smaller his world became. But here's the truth he discovered too late. Self-talk is a choice. You can train your mind to become your enemy, or you can train it to be your greatest ally. Imagine if, instead of saying, "I can't," Harry had said, "I'll learn." Imagine if every "I'm too late" had been replaced with "now is the time." The story of his life could have unfolded differently. The words we feed ourselves shape the life we live. Harry's lesson was painful but powerful. The battle is won or lost not in the world outside, but in the dialogue within. Clinging to the past was one of Harry's heaviest burdens, though he carried it quietly. He replayed old mistakes in his mind like a film stuck on repeat. Every wrong choice, every missed opportunity, every word he wished he could take back. Instead of walking forward, he walked while constantly looking over his shoulder. He told himself, "If only I had done things differently, I would be happier today." But the past is unchangeable. It is a locked book, its pages written once and sealed forever. Harry spent years scratching at those pages, hoping to rewrite them, but all he managed to do was slow his steps in the present. He became so focused on what he couldn't undo that he failed to notice what he still had the power to create. Holding on to the past often feels like loyalty, as though you're honoring your experiences by keeping them close. But in truth, it is like carrying a suitcase filled with stones. Every day, the load grows heavier. By 50, Harry realized he had carried regrets longer than he had carried his hopes. He remembered a passage from The Power of Now that spoke of how the mind lives either in yesterday or tomorrow, but life itself exists only here, in this moment. And yet, Harry was never fully here. He was trapped in the echo of his younger self's mistakes, shackled by guilt and what-ifs. The tragedy of clinging to the past is that it blinds you to the present and steals your future. Opportunities passed Harry by, not because he lacked ability, but because his hands were too full of regret to grasp them. The truth he finally discovered was simple but hard to accept. You cannot step into the life you want while dragging the weight of the one you lost. The past is a teacher, not a prison. Its lessons are valuable, but its walls are not meant to confine you. Harry's story reminds us that freedom begins the moment you choose to put down yesterday and walk, lighter and unburdened, into today. Tolerating toxic relationships was another silent trap that shaped Harry's life. He believed that being surrounded by people, any people, was better than being alone, so he stayed close to those who drained him, mocked his ambitions, and fueled his doubts. They laughed when he spoke of dreams, pulled him back when he tried to grow, and whispered negativity so often that it became background noise. Harry told himself these were his friends. After all, he had known them for years. But years of knowing someone does not equal years of growing with them. What he didn't see was that every conversation left him smaller, not stronger. Every time he shared his hopes, they threw shadows over them until his own light dimmed. The truth is, relationships are like soil. Some help you grow, some poison your roots. Harry's soil was poisoned, yet he stayed because change felt uncomfortable. He feared loneliness more than he feared the slow death of his potential. But loneliness is only temporary. Staying chained to the wrong people can last a lifetime. There's a line in the 48 Laws of Power that warns against associating with the miserable and unlucky because their energy infects you. Harry learned this lesson late. By the time he realized their voices had shaped his beliefs, years of discouragement had already sunk deep. When he finally started stepping away, the silence felt strange, but in that silence, he heard something he hadn't heard in years, his own voice. Without constant negativity pressing on him, his ideas felt possible again. His spirit felt lighter. He began to see that choosing who surrounds you is not an act of selfishness, but of survival. Harry's story shows us that toxic relationships don't always announce themselves with cruelty. Sometimes they come disguised as jokes, as concern, or as long-standing companionship. But the measure of any relationship is simple. Do they water your growth or drain it? The people you allow around you will either lift your wings or clip them. And by 50, Harry realized the saddest truth of all, that he had spent more time with anchors than with sails. Comparing himself to others was perhaps the most subtle yet most destructive habit Harry carried. It began innocently, scrolling through social media, glancing at a colleague's success, hearing about an old friend's achievements. But soon, it became a daily ritual. He measured his worth against highlight reels, forgetting that people rarely show the struggles behind their victories. Each comparison whispered to him, "You're behind, you're not enough, you should be further by now." What could have been moments of inspiration turned into sharp reminders of what he thought he lacked. Instead of celebrating his progress, he dismissed it as too small, too late. The trap of comparison is that it never ends. There will always be someone richer, younger, smarter, or more accomplished. And when your eyes are always fixed on others, you stop seeing your own path. Harry didn't notice the quiet victories of his life, the family that loved him, the talents he had ignored, the opportunities waiting within reach, because his gaze was fixed outward, never inward. He once read in The Courage to be Disliked that true freedom comes when you stop living to meet others' expectations. Yet Harry lived as if he were in a race he didn't sign up for, chasing standards he never chose. The more he compared, the more bitter he became, until joy itself felt out of reach. It was only later, after years of envy and frustration, that Harry realized something simple but liberating. The only person worth comparing yourself to is the person you were yesterday. Growth is not measured against strangers. It is measured against your own past. When he finally shifted his focus inward, progress began to feel meaningful again. Comparison steals gratitude, and without gratitude, even success feels empty. Harry's story reminds us that the finish line is not someone else's life. It is your own potential fully lived. And the race worth running is not about being better than others, but about being better than the self you left behind. Choosing comfort over growth was another habit that quietly shaped Harry's life. He loved the familiar, the routines that felt safe, the jobs that didn't challenge him too much, the conversations that never stretched his thinking. Comfort became his hiding place. It protected him from failure, but it also protected him from progress. When opportunities appeared, Harry often hesitated. A chance to learn a new skill? Too risky. An invitation to lead a project? Too much pressure. Even when he thought about moving cities or starting the small business he dreamed of, the thought of discomfort made him retreat. He told himself he was being realistic, but in truth, he was simply afraid of the unknown. The problem with comfort is that it disguises itself as peace, but it slowly starves growth. Muscles only grow under strain, and character only grows when tested. Harry avoided discomfort so often that his courage weakened, his curiosity dimmed, and his potential remained locked away. By the time he reached 50, he realized he had built a cage out of cushions, soft enough to lull him to sleep, but strong enough to keep him trapped. He remembered reading in Mindset by Carol Dweck that those who adopt a growth mindset view challenges as opportunities, while those with a fixed mindset avoid them to protect their ego. Harry had lived fixed, protecting himself from temporary discomfort while sacrificing long-term growth. When he finally stepped out, even in small ways, taking a new course, speaking in public, saying yes to projects that scared him, he discovered something surprising. Discomfort wasn't his enemy, it was his guide. Every moment he stretched, he felt more alive. The fear never vanished, but on the other side of it, there was pride, confidence, and momentum. Harry's story shows us that comfort may feel safe, but safety without growth is just slow decay. Growth often hides in the very places you avoid, in the challenges you fear, in the risks you resist. And the truth he learned is this: comfort never creates greatness, only courage does. Living without purpose was the final and perhaps the most painful habit Harry carried into his later years. He woke up every day, went to work, came home, repeated the cycle, and mistook routine for meaning. He thought survival was enough, that paying bills and fulfilling obligations would somehow lead to fulfillment. But deep inside, there was an emptiness he couldn't name. Purpose is what turns existence into a story. Without it, days blur together, years vanish unnoticed, and life feels like a treadmill, moving but going nowhere. Harry often wondered why he felt restless, why joy seemed distant, even when he achieved small goals. The truth was simple: he was living by default, not by design. He remembered reading Man's Search for Meaning, where Viktor Frankl wrote that those who have a why can endure almost any how. But Harry never searched for his why. He let the world decide his path, what job to take, what success should look like, what dreams were realistic. By the time he questioned it, decades had passed, and he struggled to recall what he had once wanted for himself. The tragedy of living without purpose is not just that you waste time, it's that you waste yourself. The unique gifts you carry, the passions meant to light your path, the contributions only you can make, all of them remain buried. Harry realized too late that the world had never needed him to be perfect. It had only needed him to be present, intentional, and true to his calling. When he finally began searching for meaning, he started small. He volunteered, mentored younger people, and revisited old passions he had abandoned. For the first time in years, his days felt different. They carried weight, not just repetition. Purpose didn't erase struggle, but it gave struggle a reason. Harry's lesson was clear. Routine can sustain the body, but only purpose sustains the soul. Without it, life feels like a clock ticking. With it, every tick feels like progress towards something greater. And by 50, he understood that purpose is not something you stumble upon. It is something you choose.